everybody, and welcome back to my channel. And today we're going to be talking about the Aspergers and Me documentary done by the BBC presenter Chris Packham. And as an autistic woman, I felt it's important to give my thoughts on this documentary. The documentary was originally aired last year on the BBC, but I've recently rewatched it again to get some fresh perspective, and I thought it was about time that I did it now, especially as it's still Autism Awareness Month. We've still got 3 days left to raise awareness, so I thought I'd do this as one of the final videos for it. Let's get into the video. So at the beginning of this documentary, we see Chris Packham admitting that he has Asperger's disorder, or Asperger's syndrome, and it's part of the autism spectrum. And he said that he's tried to be normal for most of his life, but now feels that he has to explain about having autism and how he lives with it. He says that people have seen him as weird. I agree with him. Then he goes on to say that there is no typical autistic person. I agree with this, because everyone, once they know that you're autistic, they tend to say, well, you're all the same. I've met one person with autism, you're all the same. No, wrong. Because we're all on a different spectrum. We're all on a different functioning side, if you want to call it. So you have like the people who are more severe autistic this side, and you have the high functioning end this side. Not that that's really accurate or relevant right now, but yeah, I'm more on the high functioning end, same as Chris Packham is. So yeah, and then he goes into sensory overload talk. So basically he shows us that he's thinking about these planes in the documentary, and he says right now, like, I have so much overload going on in my head, because he's thinking about not just these planes but other things that he's interested in, because as on the spectrum we tend to have a lot of intense interests, which we often see as obsessions or something that we're deeply interested in. I agree with him on this aspect, because then he goes into his kitchen and we see that his sister is there, and she explains that Chris doesn't often see social cues or the appropriate way to say things, and she asks him about why doesn't he like being around people. He's like, well, to be honest, I just don't like them. I don't want to be around them. And that can be taken as being rude or blunt, but at the same time she's asking him like about why he doesn't see subtle cues and stuff like that. That's because we're on the autistic spectrum. So I just want to talk about that part of it as well. And then his sister then goes on to say, well, it's because autistic people are manipulative. This is so damaging, because we're not manipulative people. We're far from manipulative people. We're just people who don't understand social cues, body language, when or if to interject into a situation. So again, that can be a very dangerous, stereotypical thing to say about people with autism or Asperger's. And I agree with Chrissy, and goes on to say, well, he likes to have structure, order, routine, because he likes to control the environment around him. I'm pretty much the same with that, because I like to control where I'm going, who I'm with, how I'm going to get there, how I'm going to get home. I like to be able to control the minimal effects around me. So if that means going to a meeting, I need to know where it is, who's going to be there, what time it starts, what time it finishes, how I'm going to get there, how I'm going to get home. And that process will be the same for everything that I do pretty much within my day-to-day daily activities. So I can agree that it lowers our anxiety, it lowers the sensory overload, it lowers the panic rate of feeling stressed out and feeling like we can't cope kind of thing. So I totally agree with Chris on that aspect as well. And then he goes on to talking about clothing. Clothing is so important, because a lot of people on the autistic spectrum struggle with clothing. They struggle with knowing what to wear or how is it appropriate with like Chris. I'm not as bad as Chris with clothing, but when he says about picking certain things and picking multiple items of that item, it's done because it's comfort, it's security, it's not itchy, it's not scratchy. Like you mentioned about taking all the tags out of the clothing. When I buy something new, the first thing that I will do is I'll get it home, snip the tag off the back, wash it in the washing machine, because I don't want that scratchy, itchy feeling on my skin. So again, I can retaliate what Chris is saying there, because when we do try on new clothes or wear new clothes, they do appear itchy and scratchy and heavy, and it can really irritate our skin. So I can completely agree with that. And also it's a texture thing, so it has to be the right texture as well, because when you're looking for new clothes, it can be quite overwhelming to talk about textures and how you see things. So yeah, and then we see Chris traveling to America in the next part of the documentary, and he's going to this school that are talking about a potential cure or treatment for autism. And he meets this young guy who basically is having this treatment called TMS, which is a magnetic treatment where they put this little wire, they plug these little wires into his head, and they shoot electrical bolts into his head, electrical pulses into his head to try and make him less autistic. And at first, Chris does say sometimes he wishes he could take a pill to make his autism go away. Sorry, Chris, I have to disagree with you there, because I know having autism is hard, or Aspergers is hard. I'm high function myself, but when you get to a point of saying things like you wish you could take something for it, that's really sad, because again, you're making the whole autistic community look bad by saying, oh, you wish you could take something. I understand that obviously there's the sensory overload, the anxiety and stuff. I get that. I'm not saying that it's not bad for you at all. That's not what I'm saying. But to say that kind of thing can be quite dangerous. Then he goes on to say that there's an estimated 25 million autistic people in the world. That's huge. I had no idea that number was so big, that there's that many of us in the world. And also then he goes on to say to the principal of this school that he agrees with him about questions need to be asked about autism education and training. And that in the US, this principal had told him that ABA is the best treatment for people with autism. Luckily, in the UK, Chris follows up and says ABA is currently banned within the UK, and there's only a few places that are doing ABA here in the UK. But ABA is a conversion therapy. It's a therapy to force autistic people to be normal. And to be honest with you, why would I want to convert to something that's not me? I'm autistic. I was born this way. I didn't choose it. But this is the way that I was born. This is the way that I am day to day. And I wouldn't want to change myself. So for ABA to be promoted so much in America, I quite worry for autistic people's futures, because you're trying to force them into people that they're not. And that's really, really highly dangerous, because you're going to aggravate the anxiety, sensory overloads, depression, and other serious mental health issues. I just don't agree with it. I think ABA is abhorrent. I have actually done a video a few weeks back on my channel, if you wish to find it, into the reasons why. ABA basically, like I said, is forced manipulation. It's to try and stamp out autistic traits and to try and make us normal, which luckily Chris did turn around and say if he was asked would he want ABA as a treatment or would he want to be made normal, he said hell no. So I'm thankful that he did say that after having the questions with this principal, but at the same time he still went and witnessed it being done to autistic children, and the thought that this is being done to autistic adults as well is quite scary. So I will not accept ABA as a treatment, never ever ever, or any magnetic therapy, anything like that. I am born the way I am. I accept that. I'm happy with it. I don't think it's something that's bad or needs to be wiped out, stamped out, whatever you want to call it. Then he shows us that he's going to the Isle of Wight to meet his girlfriend, who is the head of the Isle of Wight Zoo. And they are having lunch together. And basically what happens is she asks him a empathetic question. And she says, I have a friend's wedding coming up. Do you want to come with me? And he turns around and says, no thanks. He goes, phew. And she finds it really, she found it really awkward, because she wants Chris to go with her to enjoy it, but again, part of having Asperger's and autism is we don't like big crowds, we don't like social groups. So I'm quite okay with social groups. I've been brought up to be very social, so for me it's not too much of a not convenient. But for Chris, obviously he struggles with it more than me. He struggles with being around people. He likes to be on his own, in his own space, and I love my own space, don't get me wrong. Being here at my own house, doing my own things, and not being told what I can and can't do on a certain day-to-day basis is very therapeutic, because I can just shut the door and disappear from the world. So I can get that, having your own peace, quiet, serenity, things like that is very, very good on the autistic spectrum. And when he gets asked, would you live with your girlfriend, I think that's a really impersonal question, because clearly. He's just said he likes living on his own, and the fact he's been with his girlfriend 10 years, as he states in the documentary, and he says part of that is because they live alone, they live separate. And I think that's the best thing for autistic people in general, is living on their own is good because they have their own independence and their own space. They don't have to worry about being home for a certain person or cooking dinner, all that kind of routine conformity stuff. So that's that side of the situation as well. Then his girlfriend says about people with autism lack empathy or emotions. This is really dangerous because, again, it comes from the stereotype of, oh, well, you don't explain empathy, you don't know what empathy is. Actually, a lot of us autistic people do have empathy, we just have too much of it, and when you have too much empathy, it can be quite frustrating because you're trying to assess what you're feeling at one time, how to convene it in the right way. And I think saying, oh, you don't have empathy, you don't care, is complete rubbish, because we do have empathy, we just have it in different ways of showing it. And for Chris, for me, others, it is quite confusing because empathy is a two-way process. So that can be really dangerous with saying that. And like she says about being in social situations, it's because we don't understand how to be in social situations. Again, it's about misreading body language, miscommunication, where you're saying the wrong thing or the inappropriate thing. So again, it is very nerve-wracking being in a social situation as an autistic person. So I can identify that with Chris. I can understand what it means to be on the autistic spectrum. So yeah, I think that's just something that we learn to deal with as society for help. And then Chris finishes this off by saying, we have to conform to society, and it takes mega effort to look like we're conforming to society. Again, it's because we've had to mask our autism for so long. We've had to compete like we're normal, and we're not. We're far from normal. We have different days, different moods, different situations, and I think that's the problem. Like, we get to a place where we're not able to be around people, and that's okay. It's about self-care, taking time for ourselves. So again, I can use that, but again, I don't need to conform as much as what Chris does. Obviously, with being on TV, it's different. I've learned to have coping strategies next to me, so when I do videos or when I'm going out in public, I learn to communicate successfully because I have communication strategies. So again, it's about learning what to say, when to say it, and using things like, hi, how are you, and respond to a simple conversation. And then the last part of this video is he is in the car with Steve Silverman, who is the author of Neurotribes. And Steve is a big advocate for autistic people. He has written this book to help communicate with autistic people better. And he was in the car with Chris where they visited Microsoft. And a lot of people who work for Microsoft in the States are on the autistic spectrum. They have this special program where they hire people who are on the autistic spectrum. And the same as Google in the States as well. And again, it shows that businesses like them can show empathy. They do have a policy in place to hire people on the spectrum to share our gifts, our experiences, our talents. And they give us a chance to prove that we can work. Because a lot of autistic want to work. A lot of people do want to work, but there's only 16% of us in a full-time job. So it's quite low. I'm quite shocked that is that low in general. He says about we need to better understand autistic people better. And Chris, I totally agree with you, 100%. Totally agree with that statement. And thank you for saying no to a cure. And again, at the last bit of this documentary, he's with his, I think, niece or friend Megan. And she basically asks Chris to go to her graduation. And again, it's social cues, it's social groups, it's overwhelm, it's noise. And he says, why would I want to go to a social situation like that? And what should you just get this bit of paper? And she's like, because I want you to celebrate with me. He's like, nah, no thanks. And again, it's because you shouldn't expect people to be in social situations. People with autism just can't do it. We don't have that capacity to be in social situations. So I hope you found my review of Chris Packham's documentary useful. Please like, comment, share and subscribe, and I'll see you again soon. Bye!